harm you socially. Look, I get it. That's a real danger. It's a real thing. But please, do us all a favor and sit this one out.
So who are those people? Those are the people in the videos. ProPublica reports this, quote, 29 of the 36 speakers have worked for Trump in some capacity on his 2016-2017 transition team, in the Trump administration, or on his 2024 re-election campaign. The Heritage Foundation and most of the people who appear in the videos cited in this story did not respond to ProPublica's repeated requests for comment. A spokesperson for the Trump campaign, who features in one of the videos, said this, quote, as our campaign leadership and President Trump have repeatedly stated, Agenda 47 is the only official policy agenda from our campaign. A deep look into Project 2025's training of political appointees for the next Republican administration is where we begin this hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. ProPublica investigative reporter Andy Kroll, who is bylined on this reporting, is here with us. Plus, writer and editor for Protect Democracy, Amanda Carpenter, is back. Former top prosecutor at the Department of Justice, MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissman is here. And former lead investigator for the January 6th Select Committee, Tim Hafey, is back with us. I want to start with the reporting. It's amazing, Andy Kroll, that you got your hands on these training videos. Take us through what's described in the story, sort of the ho-hum to the radical.
Yeah, you see a real range of guidance and advice come through in these videos. And I'm glad that you pointed out the part about 29 of the speakers of the 36 in total being Trump-connected people. These are very much lessons learned, advice, wisdom gleaned from Trump administration alums offered to what will be potential future Trump administration alums, of course, if Donald Trump wins in November. So you have some pretty extreme policy suggestions in these training videos. One that we highlight is a former Trump official talking about how climate change is not really real, it is not a threat, that the federal government has overblown this issue, and that future appointees need to, quote unquote, eradicate climate change references from every federal government document that they see. There are pieces of advice in here from other former Trump administration officials about eliminating any positions that have to do with gender equity, anything that advances equity and equality, as President Biden has tried to do in several executive actions. Again, this word eradicate is used. Those are in there as well. And then finally, I would say something that actually Tim Walz kind of nodded to in that first opening. This is a plan to have Trump appointees, if, again, he's elected, land and on day one continue the work of the last administration. They are trying to avoid what happened last time, chaos, confusion, inefficiency in that first year or more. This is a plan to hit the ground running if Donald Trump wins in November.
Andy, let me show you something J.D. Vance said about his advice for how to land and avoid the chaos of the last Trump presidency.
I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people. And when the courts, because you will get taken to court, and then when the courts stop you, stand before the country like Andrew Jackson did and say the Chief Justice has made his ruling, now let him enforce it.
It is in language, substance, tone, and tenor indecipherable from the language, substance, tone, and tenor on these videos. How much of J.D. Vance's ethos is absorbed in Project 2025?
The ethos that J.D. Vance espouses there and the substance and the underlying strategy of these videos are one and the same. J.D. Vance is just parroting in his typically extreme J.D. Vance language something that Project 2025 already advocates, which is reclassifying tens of thousands of career government employees to make them easier to fire, and then replacing those employees with political loyalists. That's what J.D. Vance is saying essentially in that clip. These videos that we've published, and we've published all of them, by the way, ProPublica.org. You can watch all 14 hours if you have nothing else to do on Monday night. These videos, these videos are here to train those people who would go into the administration in the spirit of what J.D. Vance has just said. So this isn't just idle podcast talk banter that JD Vance is putting out there, though there is a lot of that, obviously. There's a real plan here, real strategy, dozens of videos and hours of training so that those Trump loyalist appointees, the ones who are prepared, as that one video showed us, to sacrifice their social or professional standings to work for him, can be there on day one, step into those jobs and enact his agenda.
I asked a reporter who's gone through all of what's in the document what the scariest thing about Project 2025 is, and he said it's its specificity and granularity. I keep thinking that when I watch. I haven't made it through all the videos, but when I watch them, there is real specificity and granularity that was lacking from Trump's first term. So I'd ask you the same question: what strikes you about all of the time and effort and energy that's gone into Project 2025?
A few things strike me. There's a video in that collection that features Rick Dearborn, Republican official who led Trump's transition in 2016 and 17, and Ed Corrigan, a major think tank leader, conservative operative in Washington. It's a really interesting conversation about what a transition team does, landing teams, beachhead teams. It gets a little technical, but they tell some war stories from 16 and 17. And I watched that video, and it's in the context of a video made for political appointees to watch, learn, and better understand what they're going to do if they go into government. They're prepared this time. They've cataloged the lessons and the mistakes from the first Trump administration, the first Trump transition even. They will not be unprepared if Trump wins. There was this sort of meme out there that Trump's most extreme ideas were tempered by his inability or incompetence at actually pulling them off. He was too distracted. He was pulled in too many different directions or on social media or whatever. But this time he has hundreds, if not thousands, of people in line behind him, thanks in large part to Project 2025, waiting to go into government with a mission, with a focus, with a portfolio, and with all the collected wisdom from 4 years of the first Trump presidency. That is a very different situation than 2016 and 17. And it really has grave ramifications for putting in place the kind of policies that are in that 900-page Project 2025 document.
Andrew Weissman, let me bring you in on something that Andy and his colleagues report from the videos. They write this, quote, operating under the assumption that some career employees might seek to thwart a future conservative president's agenda. Some of the advice pertains to how political appointees can avoid being derailed or bogged down by the government bureaucrats who work with them. Katie Sullivan, who was an acting assistant attorney general at DOJ under Trump, urges viewers to, quote, empower your political staff, limit access to appointees' calendars, and leave out career staff from early meetings with more senior agency officials. Quote, you are making it clear to career staff that your political appointees are in charge. Some of this is about avoiding the pitfalls of the first Trump term. But I mean, this largely, by the time Bill Barr got, this largely was the MO at the Department of Justice. This is how Jeff Berman rejected prosecutions that he didn't think were there and sent them back to Maine DOJ, and they brought them. This is how Bill Barr repelled lifelong prosecutors from the cases involving Mike Flynn and other Trump accomplices when he put his thumb on the scale of their sentence. Talk about what it means that this will happen on day one and in an operationalized way at DOJ.
Well, I think there's no question that what you've been talking about, which is that they're ready and they will not make the same mistakes as last time. I remember people saying last time that you had sort of malevolence, but it's fortunately matched with incompetence. And so it took a long time for the Trump administration to sort of understand the levers of power and what to do. That's not what's going to happen now. Now, I think it's important to note that, elections have consequences, and the president and the attorney general are entitled to have their policies, as long as they're legal, become, what happens at the Department of Justice, in terms of what kind of cases should be brought in general, what should be prioritized. I think the substance is really the story here, as well as the fact that they're going to be ready. And the substance is, if you care about reproductive rights, if you care about climate, if you care about LGBTQ rights, then the ProPublica revelations are things that you have to read, because over and over and over again, each of those things, whether it's abortion, whether it's climate change, whether it's LGBTQ rights, are attacked root and branch. It is, it's absolutely correct that it's not that they just say, leave it to the states. That's not the position of the incoming administration. It is that you need to eradicate all references to climate change. You need to make sure that you don't talk about abortion, that killing fetuses is murder. That is abortion. They make a reference to the left is making abortion sound a little less like murder, and we can't have that. So it's absolutely clear. It's not to sort of leave it to the states. It's that it should be banned completely. And also anything having to do with LGBTQ rights, with the idea of trans rights, all of that is attacked substantively. So it's really a question of, if you think that those are things that are important to you, then it's really clear in terms of this election who you should be voting for.
Well, and Amanda, this is where Trump finds himself politically at odds with Project 2025. I mean, make no mistake, if it polled at 70%, he would not be distancing himself from it. It is only because it is wildly unpopular that he's throwing all of these former people that worked for him under the bus. Let me read you some of the polling. This is from UMass. Americans widely oppose Project 2025. Our poll showed that a large majority of Americans oppose key pillars of Project 2025, such as the replacement of career government officials with political appointees. 68% of Americans oppose restricting a woman's right to contraception. 72% are opposed, and eliminating the Department of Education. 64% opposed. I mean, Trump was unpopular, but even Trump wasn't as unpopular as his policy infrastructure is.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is that Trump's policies in Project 2025 are largely one and the same. I mean, you can look at the same policies that he lays out on his campaign website through Agenda 47 and see the promises to implement Schedule F and to do all the rest. And so, but I do think it's sort of important, because I come from this conservative movement to separate what is acceptable and what is objectionable about those training videos. I mean, the bread and butter of the conservative movement, places like Heritage, the services that they sort of provide is education and training. The fact that they put out these videos, I mean, frankly, they've been doing things like this for decades. I've attended many of these similar kind of training seminars. My welcoming to conservative movement in Washington was through Leadership Institute and programs like Start a Paper, where you learned how to write stories about your campus website. And it was really great. I mean, in those days, it provided networking opportunities. And I don't think it's much different than what a lot of organizations do. And listen, the president does have a right to have appointees who push his policies. But what becomes objectionable, the scary thing about what they're proposing, is that what Donald Trump and the Heritage Foundation through Project 2025 are uniting around is a massive increase in executive presidential power to gut checks and balances to implement the authoritarian agenda, which is laid out, line by line in Project 2025 and Donald Trump's Agenda 47 on his campaign website. And, you asked earlier, what's the scariest part about this?